The sound of my laptop shutting down echoed through our home office like a gunshot. But it wasn't just shutting down. Adrian had yanked the power cord so hard that my 3 years of work vanished into digital darkness before I could save anything. Women can't build success. His voice cracked as he screamed the words that would haunt me forever. You're supposed to support my dreams, not compete with them. I stared at the black screen, my reflection looking back at me like a ghost. 3 years of late nights, weekend work, and designs that had won us our biggest clients, all gone. The portfolio I'd been secretly organizing to propose our partnership, deleted with one violent pull of a cord. Adrian, what did you just do? My voice came out as a whisper, but inside I was screaming. The presentation I'd spent months perfecting for tomorrow's investor meeting, the rebranding concepts for our 3 major clients, the competition entries that were due next week, everything lived on that laptop. He stood over me, his face twisted into something I'd never seen before. This wasn't the man I'd married 2 years ago. This wasn't the college sweetheart who used to trace my sketches with his finger and call me brilliant. This was a stranger wearing my husband's face. I did what I should have done years ago, he snarled, pacing behind my chair like a caged animal. Do you know what Mr. Wellington said to me today? He said maybe I should let my talented wife handle the creative direction since she clearly has the better eye. My heart stopped. James Wellington was our biggest potential investor, the man who could take Adrian's consultancy from struggling startup to major player. We'd been courting his business for months. That's good, isn't it? I turned in my chair to face him, confused. If he thinks I'm talented, maybe we could finally become real partners like we always talked about. Adrian's laugh was cold and bitter. Partners? Zara, you work for ME. This is my company. I built this from nothing while you were playing with colored pencils in art class. The words hit me like physical blows. Colored pencils? I'd graduated top of my design program while he barely scraped by in business school. I'd been the one working 18-hour days to build our client base. I'd been the one whose designs won us every major contract we had. But, Adrian, those designs that Wellington loved, I created those. The Morrison account, the tech startup rebrand, the restaurant chain concept, those were all mine. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking. You know they were mine. His face went red, veins bulging in his neck. Nothing is yours. You're my wife. Everything you create belongs to this household, to this business, to me. He grabbed my shoulders, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. I'm so sick of everyone asking about my creative wife, like you're some kind of genius, and I'm just lucky to have you. I pulled away from his grip, backing toward the wall. Is that what this is about? You're jealous? Jealous? He laughed again, but there was no humor in it. I'm protecting my business from a delusional woman who thinks she can steal credit for my success. My back hit the wall, and suddenly I felt trapped in my own home. Steal credit? Adrian, I've never taken credit for anything. I've spent 2 years letting you present my work as yours because you said it was better for business. I've stood silently while clients praised designs I created and watched you accept awards for concepts I developed. Because that's what a good wife does, he shouted. She supports her husband's career instead of trying to destroy it with her ego. I looked around our office, the space where I'd spent countless nights perfecting designs while he slept. The walls were covered with framed articles about Adrian Mitchell's innovative design approach and awards with only his name engraved on them. Not once had my name appeared anywhere, despite my work being the foundation of everything he'd achieved. I want a divorce, I whispered. The words hung in the air between us like smoke. Adrian's face went from red to white in seconds. What did you say? I said I want a divorce. My voice grew stronger with each word. I can't do this anymore. I can't pretend that erasing me is love. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. If you leave me, you'll have nothing. No portfolio, no references, no reputation. Who's going to believe that little Zara Mitchell created all these award-winning designs? You're nobody without me. I looked at the black laptop screen one more time, seeing my reflection staring back. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was nobody without him. But as I stood there in the ruins of my marriage, something deep inside me began to burn. 2 years earlier, I stood in front of the mirror in my childhood bedroom, adjusting my wedding dress for the 100th time. The ivory silk felt like a promise against my skin, and I couldn't stop smiling. Today was the day Adrian and I would officially become partners in everything: love, life, and dreams. "You look radiant," my mom whispered, fastening the pearl necklace that had been in our family for generations. "Are you ready to become Mrs. Mitchell?" I nodded, though my stomach fluttered with nervous excitement. Through the window, I could see guests arriving at the small chapel where Adrian waited for me. We'd planned everything ourselves, determined to start our marriage debt-free so we could invest in our shared future. "I still can't believe you're marrying that boy from your design class," Nina said, appearing in the doorway with my bouquet. She'd been my maid of honor despite her reservations about Adrian. "Remember when you used to complain about how he never turned in his projects on time?" I laughed, taking the flowers from her. "That's exactly why we're perfect together. I'm organized, he's spontaneous, I'm creative, he's business-minded. We balance each other out." Nina's smile didn't quite reach her eyes, but she hugged me anyway. "Just promise me you'll never lose yourself in trying to make him happy." At the time, her words seemed silly. How could loving someone make you lose yourself? The ceremony was perfect. Adrian looked handsome in his navy suit, his eyes bright with tears as I walked down the aisle. When we exchanged vows, his voice shook with emotion. "Zara, you're not just my wife, you're my partner in every sense of the word. Together, we're going to build something amazing. Your talent and my business sense will create an empire." I believed every word. Our honeymoon was spent in a tiny cabin by the lake, sketching business plans on napkins and dreaming out loud about our future design consultancy. Adrian had already registered the business name Mitchell Design Solutions and secured a small office space with money his parents had given us as a wedding gift. "I can see it now," he said, lying beside me on the dock with his head in my lap. "In 5 years, we'll be the most sought-after design team in the city. You'll handle all the creative work, and I'll manage the business side. We'll be unstoppable." I ran my fingers through his hair, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "What if I'm not good enough? What if clients don't like my work?" He sat up and cupped my face in his hands. "Are you kidding me? You graduated valedictorian from one of the best design programs in the country. Your professors called you a natural talent. I barely passed my business classes, but you're going to change everything." Those words felt like magic. Adrian believed in me more than I believed in myself. When we returned from our honeymoon, reality set in quickly. The office space was smaller than we'd imagined, just 2 desks crammed into a room that barely fit both of us. Adrian had already scheduled meetings with potential clients, confident that his charm and my portfolio would win them over. Our first client was a local restaurant owner who needed a complete rebrand. I spent 3 weeks developing concepts, staying up until dawn, perfecting every detail. When we presented the work, the client's face lit up. "This is exactly what I envisioned," he said, shaking Adrian's hand enthusiastically. "You have incredible talent, Mr. Mitchell." I waited for Adrian to correct him, to explain that I'd created the designs. Instead, he smiled and accepted the praise. "Thank you. I'm passionate about helping businesses tell their authentic stories through visual identity." My stomach dropped, but I told myself it was just easier this way. We were married now. What was his was mine, and what was mine was his, right? After the client left, I confronted Adrian gently. "Why didn't you tell him I designed the concepts?" He pulled me into his arms, kissing my forehead. "Baby, we're a team. It doesn't matter who gets credit as long as we're building our future together. Besides, clients feel more confident working with an established businessman than a fresh graduate, even one as talented as you." It made sense at the time. Adrian had more experience dealing with clients, and I was still learning the business side of design. I convinced myself that supporting his confidence was supporting our shared dreams. Over the next few months, the pattern continued. I created, he presented, clients praised his work, and our business grew. Each time I felt a twinge of discomfort, Adrian would remind me that we were partners, that my success was his success, and vice versa. "One day when we're established, we'll make sure everyone knows how talented you are," he promised. "But right now, we need to focus on building credibility." I believed him because I loved him. I believed him because I wanted our dreams to come true. I had no idea I was slowly erasing myself, one design at a time. 6 months into our marriage, the first crack appeared in our perfect partnership. I was working late in our cramped office, putting finishing touches on a logo design for a tech startup, when Adrian walked in with coffee and that smile that used to make my heart skip. "How's it coming along?" he asked, setting the cup beside my computer. "Almost done." I think this concept really captures their innovative spirit while staying professional. I turned the screen toward him, proud of the clean lines and subtle tech elements I'd incorporated. Adrian studied it for a moment, then frowned. "It's good, but maybe a little too feminine? Tech companies want something more aggressive, more powerful." My confidence wavered. Feminine? I was going for clean and modern. "I know, baby, but trust me on this. I understand what these clients want." He sat on the edge of my desk, his tone gentle but firm. "Why don't you try something bolder? Maybe use darker colors, sharper angles?" I spent another 3 hours reworking the design, second-guessing every choice. When I finally showed him the revised version, he nodded approvingly. "Much better. This is exactly what they're looking for." The next day, we presented both concepts to the client. To my surprise, they immediately gravitated toward my original design. "This one is perfect," the CEO said, pointing to the version Adrian had called too feminine. "It's exactly the kind of fresh, approachable image we want to project. You really understand our vision, Mr. Mitchell." Again, Adrian accepted the praise without correction. But this time, I noticed something different in his expression, a flash of irritation that he quickly masked with his professional smile. As our client list grew, so did Adrian's need to control every interaction. He started scheduling all meetings when I was running errands or visiting my parents. When I asked why, he had reasonable explanations. "The Henderson meeting got moved up last minute, and you were at the grocery store. I couldn't reschedule. They're flying out tonight. Mrs. Chen called while you were in the shower. She needed an immediate answer about the timeline." Each time, I'd return to find another successful presentation had happened without me. Another client convinced that Adrian Mitchell was a design genius. "Don't worry," he'd say, pulling me close. "I told them all about your contributions. They know you're the creative force behind everything." But when I suggested joining the next client call, Adrian's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Zara, you're incredibly talented, but client management is tricky. You're still learning the business side. What if you say something that confuses them or makes us look unprofessional?" His words stung, but I pushed down the hurt. Maybe he was right. Maybe I did need more experience before facing clients directly. The isolation grew gradually. Adrian started working from coffee shops, claiming he needed thinking space for strategy sessions. He'd return with new projects, new clients, new opportunities, all secured through conversations I wasn't part of. "The Morrison Group wants to hire us for their complete rebrand," he announced one evening, practically glowing with excitement. "It's a 6-figure contract, Zara. This could change everything for us." I was thrilled until I learned the timeline. 3 weeks? Adrian, a complete rebrand for a company that size usually takes months. "I know it's ambitious, but I promised them we could deliver. You're so talented. I know you can make it work." So I worked. 18-hour days became my norm. I lived on coffee and determination, creating logo concepts, business card designs, website mock-ups, and brand guidelines. Adrian would check in periodically, offering encouragement and small suggestions that somehow always made me doubt my instincts. "This color palette is nice, but don't you think it's a little safe? Morrison is a bold company. The typography works, but maybe something more unique? We want to stand out." Each comment sent me back to the drawing board, chasing a vision that seemed to shift every time I got close to capturing it. The night before the presentation, I finally had everything perfect. Adrian reviewed the complete package, his face unreadable. "This is good work, Zara. Really good." "Good?" My heart sank. After 3 weeks of barely sleeping, good felt like failure. "I mean, great. It's great work. I'm just nervous about tomorrow. This presentation could make or break us." The next morning, I woke up with the flu. My head pounded, my throat felt like sandpaper, and I could barely stand without feeling dizzy. I can't present like this, I croaked to Adrian. Can we reschedule? His face went pale. Reschedule? Zara, this is Morrison Group. You don't reschedule with Morrison Group. Then you'll have to present without me. Something flickered across his expression. Relief? Are you sure? This is your work. You should be there. But even as he said it, he was already gathering the presentation materials, already mentally preparing to take the stage alone. Just tell them I'm sick, but that I poured my heart into every design. He kissed my forehead, his lips cool against my fever. Don't worry, baby. I'll make sure they know how talented you are. As the door closed behind him, I had no idea I'd just handed him the key to erasing me completely. The fever broke on the third day, but the sickness in my stomach remained. Adrian had been texting me updates from the Morrison presentation, each message more triumphant than the last. They love everything, standing ovation. Signed the contract on the spot. They want to discuss a long-term partnership. When he finally came home that evening, he was practically vibrating with excitement. He swept me into his arms, despite my protests about being contagious, spinning me around our tiny living room. We did it, Zara! We actually did it! Morrison Group is officially our biggest client, and they're talking about referring us to their sister companies. I should have felt elated, but something cold settled in my chest. How did the presentation go? Did you explain that I created all the designs? Adrian set me down, his smile faltering slightly. Of course I did. Well, I explained that we're a team, that Mitchell Design Solutions is built on collaboration. But did you tell them I was the one who designed everything, that I spent 3 weeks creating their entire brand identity? He moved to the kitchen, suddenly busy with making tea. Zara, you're overthinking this. What matters is that we won the contract. The client is happy, we're getting paid, and our reputation is growing. That's not what I asked. Adrian's hands stilled on the kettle. When he turned back to me, his expression was carefully neutral. Look, the presentation went perfectly because I was able to speak confidently about every design choice. If I'd spent time explaining who did what, it would have confused the message. Clients want to work with a clear leader, not a committee. The words hit me like ice water. A committee? Adrian, I'm your wife, not some random employee. I know that, but in business, perception matters. Morrison Group needed to see strength and authority. They needed to trust that their project was in capable hands. And my hands aren't capable? He sighed, running his fingers through his hair. That's not what I meant. You're incredibly talented, but you don't have experience presenting to Fortune 500 companies. What if you'd gotten nervous? What if you'd said something that made them doubt our professionalism? I stared at him, seeing a stranger where my husband used to be. So you lied to them? I didn't lie. I presented our work professionally and confidently. Everything I showed them was created by Mitchell Design Solutions. Created by me. Created by us. Zara, why are you making this into a problem? We just landed the biggest contract of our careers. But I couldn't let it go. Over the next few days, I started paying attention to things I'd been too trusting to notice before. Adrian's LinkedIn profile listed him as creative director and founder of Mitchell Design Solutions. His business cards had only his name. The company website featured a bio section that talked extensively about Adrian Mitchell's innovative design philosophy, with just one line mentioning his talented team. When I confronted him about it, he had explanations for everything. LinkedIn algorithms favor individual profiles over partnerships. It's just better for SEO. Business cards are expensive. We can add your name when we reorder. The website needs updating anyway. I'll add a whole section about you when we redesign it. But the redesign never happened. The business cards were never reordered. And Adrian's individual profile kept growing while I remained invisible. The breaking point came 3 months later when I discovered Adrian had submitted my Morrison Group designs to a prestigious industry competition under his name only. I found the submission confirmation email on our shared computer, my own work staring back at me with designer Adrian Mitchell listed in bold letters. You entered my designs in the National Design Awards, I said when he came home that night. My voice was eerily calm. Adrian froze in the doorway, his briefcase still in his hand. Zara, I can explain. Explain what? How you submitted 3 months of my work and claimed you created it? The deadline was yesterday. You were visiting your parents, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to get our work recognized. These awards could change everything for us. Our work? Adrian, look at this submission form. It says, Designer Adrian Mitchell. Not Mitchell Design Solutions. Not Adrian and Zara Mitchell, just you. He set down his briefcase slowly, his face flushing red. The form only had space for one name. I had to make a quick decision. You had to make a decision about whether to steal credit for my work? I'm not stealing anything. His voice rose sharply. We're married. We're partners. Your success is my success. Then why isn't your success my success? Why is your name the only one anyone ever sees? Adrian's mask finally slipped completely. Because I'm the one who built this business. I'm the one who finds the clients, manages the relationships, handles the contracts. You just sit in that office and draw pretty pictures. The words hung between us like poison. Pretty pictures. 3 years of 18-hour days, of pouring my soul into every design, of building his reputation one pretty picture at a time. Get out, I whispered. What? Get out of this house? Now. As Adrian grabbed his keys and stormed toward the door, he turned back one last time. You'll never make it without me, Zara. Nobody knows who you are. The door slammed, leaving me alone with the truth I'd been too afraid to face. He was right. Nobody knew who I was. But maybe it was time they learned. The divorce papers felt heavier than they should have in my hands. 6 months had passed since that terrible night when Adrian destroyed my laptop, and I was finally free. Legally, anyway. Emotionally, I felt like I was drowning in quicksand. Nina's couch had become my entire world. My clothes hung in her guest closet, my few remaining possessions fit in 2 boxes, and my laptop, a cheap replacement I'd bought with money from selling my wedding ring, sat on her coffee table like a monument to starting over. You need to eat something, Nina said, setting a plate of toast beside me. She'd been saying this every morning for weeks, and every morning I managed maybe half a slice before my stomach rebelled. I'm not hungry. Zara, you've lost 15 pounds. You're disappearing. Maybe that was the point. Maybe disappearing was easier than facing the truth about who I was without Adrian's shadow to hide in. The worst part wasn't the loneliness or the financial stress. It was the doubt. Every time I opened my laptop to work on a design, Adrian's voice echoed in my head. Pretty pictures. Nobody knows who you are. You'll never make it without me. What if he was right? I'd been freelancing for 2 months, taking tiny projects that barely paid for groceries, a logo for Nina's friend's bakery, a flyer for my neighbor's dog walking service, business cards for a local plumber. Nothing that required real creativity or challenged my skills. There's a woman here to see you, Nina called from the front door one Tuesday morning. I looked up from my laptop, confused. Nobody knew I was staying here except family. Professor Helen Carter stood in Nina's doorway, looking exactly the same as she had during my college years, silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, paint-stained cardigan, and eyes that seemed to see straight through to your soul. Hello, Zara. May I come in? I scrambled to close my laptop, suddenly embarrassed by the simple logo I'd been working on. Professor Carter, what are you doing here? She settled into Nina's armchair with the grace of someone who'd spent decades putting nervous students at ease. I heard about your divorce. And about what Adrian did to your work. My cheeks burned. How did you... The design community is smaller than you think. Word travels when someone as talented as you disappears from the industry. She leaned forward, her expression serious. I also heard about the National Design Awards. My stomach dropped. The awards Adrian had submitted using my Morrison Group designs. Did he win? He did. Best Brand Identity Design. Professor Carter's voice was carefully neutral. Quite an achievement for someone whose student portfolio was mediocre at best. The room felt like it was spinning. My work had won a national award, and Adrian's name was engraved on the trophy. I can't prove those designs were mine. I don't have any documentation, any process work. Actually, you do. Professor Carter reached into her bag and pulled out a thick folder. Do you remember the portfolio reviews we did in your senior year? You brought in work-in-progress shots of everything you created, including early concepts for what would later become the Morrison Group identity. She spread photos across Nina's coffee table, and my breath caught. There were my original sketches, dated 2 years ago, my color studies, my typography explorations, every stage of the design process that had led to the award-winning final product. I keep documentation of all my students' work, she explained, especially the exceptional ones. I had a feeling these might be important someday. Tears blurred my vision as I stared at proof of my own creativity. Why are you showing me this? Because you need to remember who you are, Zara. You're not Adrian's shadow or his assistant or his pretty picture maker. You're one of the most naturally gifted designers I've ever taught, and you're letting him steal more than just your work. You're letting him steal your confidence. She was right, but knowing it and feeling it were different things. I don't know how to start over. Every time I try to create something, I hear his voice telling me it's not good enough. Professor Carter smiled, the same encouraging expression she'd worn when I was struggling with a difficult project in school. Then, we need to help you find your own voice again. What kind of design work makes you feel alive? Not what Adrian wanted you to create, not what you think clients expect. What speaks to your soul? I thought about the question for days. What did speak to my soul? When had I felt most connected to my work? The answer came to me while I was walking through downtown, passing small businesses struggling to compete with big chains. A family-owned bookstore with a hand-painted sign. A coffee shop run by an elderly couple with mismatched furniture and walls covered in local art. A boutique owned by a young mother selling clothes she designed herself. These weren't Fortune 500 companies with massive budgets. They were real people with real stories, trying to build something meaningful with their own hands. That night, I called Professor Carter. I want to help small businesses tell their stories, I said. Real stories, authentic brands, not corporate nonsense. I want to work with people who pour their hearts into what they do. Now that, she said, sounds like the Zara I remember. 18 months after my divorce, I stood in the doorway of my new studio space, a converted warehouse loft with exposed brick walls and windows that flooded the room with natural light. It was nothing like the cramped office I'd shared with Adrian, and everything like the creative sanctuary I'd always dreamed of. This place is perfect, said Maria Santos, my newest team member, as she arranged her design books on the shelf we'd built together. At 23, she reminded me of myself at that age. Hungry, talented, and eager to prove herself. But unlike my younger self, Maria would never have to hide in someone else's shadow. I still can't believe we landed the Riverside Tech account, said Ben, my other designer, looking up from his computer where he was putting finishing touches on a brand identity for a local nonprofit. 6 months ago, you were working out of Nina's living room. I smiled, remembering those dark days that felt like a lifetime ago. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. It started with Professor Carter connecting me to Elena Vasquez, a Latina entrepreneur who needed branding for her organic skincare line but couldn't afford big agency prices. I want something that tells my grandmother's story, Elena had explained during our first meeting. She taught me everything about natural remedies, but she never got credit for her knowledge. I want her spirit in this brand. For the first time in years, I felt truly excited about a project. This wasn't about impressing corporate executives or winning awards. It was about honoring a woman's legacy and helping her granddaughter build something meaningful. I spent weeks developing Elena's brand, diving deep into her family history, learning about traditional remedies passed down through generations. The final logo incorporated elements from her grandmother's handwritten recipe cards, and the color palette was inspired by the herbs she'd grown in her garden. When Elena saw the final presentation, she cried. "This is exactly what I dreamed of but could never put into words," she whispered, touching the screen where her grandmother's influence lived on in every design element. That project changed everything. Elena's skincare line took off, and she started referring other small business owners to me. Word spread through networks I'd never accessed before. Women entrepreneurs, immigrant business owners, family companies that had been overlooked by traditional agencies. Each client brought a new story, a new challenge, a new opportunity to create something authentic. There was Carlos, who wanted his food truck branding to reflect his journey from El Salvador to America. There was Jennifer, a single mother whose handmade jewelry business needed an identity that captured both strength and femininity. There was the Thompson family, whose third-generation hardware store needed a refresh that honored their history while attracting younger customers. "Your approach is completely different from other designers we've worked with," Jennifer had told me during our final meeting. "You didn't just ask what we wanted, you asked who we were." That became my philosophy: design from the inside out. Understand the story first, then find the visual language to tell it. As my reputation grew, so did my confidence. I started speaking at small business conferences, sharing my story of rebuilding after betrayal. Other women approached me afterward, some with their own tales of stolen credit and diminished contributions. "How did you find the courage to start over?" asked Rebecca, a photographer whose ex-partner had claimed ownership of their shared portfolio. "I realized that staying small to make someone else comfortable was the real betrayal," I told her. I was betraying myself. The irony wasn't lost on me that while I was building something real and meaningful, Adrian's business was struggling. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard that several major clients had left his agency, complaining about declining creativity and missed deadlines. Without my designs to present, he was finally being judged on his own merit. "Did you see the article in Design Weekly?" Nina asked one evening as we celebrated my studio's first anniversary. She held up her phone, showing me a piece titled "The Rise of Authentic Branding: How Small Agencies Are Outpacing Corporate Giants." My studio was featured prominently, with quotes from satisfied clients and examples of our work. The article praised our human-centered approach and commitment to storytelling over selling. But the real validation came 3 months later when Riverside Tech, a rapidly growing startup, approached me directly. Their CEO had seen Elena's skincare branding and wanted the same authentic approach for his company. "We're tired of looking like every other tech company," he explained. "We want our brand to reflect who we actually are, real people solving real problems." The Riverside Tech project was my biggest contract yet, worth more than I'd made in my entire last year with Adrian. As I signed the agreement, I thought about the woman who'd sat on Nina's couch 18 months earlier, convinced she was nobody without her husband's name attached to her work. That woman had been wrong about so many things. But she'd been right about one. It was time to learn who she really was. The spotlight felt warm against my face as I stood at the podium, holding the crystal award that read, "Regional Business of the Year, Mitchell Creative Studio." The irony of keeping Mitchell as my business name wasn't lost on me. It was my name now, earned through my own work, not borrowed from someone else's identity. The ballroom was packed with the city's business elite, all eyes focused on me as I prepared to give my acceptance speech. But my gaze had already found the one face I'd been unconsciously searching for since walking into the room. Adrian sat 3 tables back, his expression a mixture of shock and something that looked almost like fear. His agency had been nominated in the emerging business category, a category I'd graduated from 2 years ago. He looked older, tired, and smaller somehow than the man who'd once loomed so large in my life. "Thank you for this incredible honor," I began, my voice steady despite the emotions swirling in my chest. 3 years ago, I thought success meant making myself invisible so someone else could shine. Tonight, I stand here as proof that our greatest failures can become our most powerful foundations. I could see Adrian shift uncomfortably in his seat. Around him, other attendees leaned forward, drawn into the story I was about to tell. When I started Mitchell Creative Studio, I had nothing but a borrowed laptop and a burning desire to help authentic businesses tell their authentic stories. I'd learned the hard way that when we hide our true selves to make others comfortable, we rob the world of what makes us unique. The audience was completely silent now. In the front row, I spotted Elena, whose skincare line had grown into $1 million business. Beside her sat Carlos, whose food truck empire now included 3 locations. Jennifer was there too, her jewelry featured in boutiques across the state. These weren't just clients. They were proof that authentic storytelling could change lives. Someone asked me backstage about my biggest inspiration. I continued, my eyes finding Adrian's again. He was gripping his water glass so tightly his knuckles had gone white. "It's an unusual answer, but I have to be honest with you." I paused, letting the moment build. This was it, the moment I'd been unconsciously preparing for since that terrible night when my laptop screen went black. My biggest inspiration came from the ashes someone else left behind. You see, there was a time when someone very close to me told me that women can't build success. He said I was just making pretty pictures, that nobody would ever know who I was without his name attached to my work. A murmur rippled through the audience. Adrian's face had gone pale. He was wrong about women, but he was right about one thing. Nobody knew who I was. Because I'd spent years hiding behind someone else's identity, letting my work be claimed by someone who was too insecure to let me shine alongside him. I lifted the award, feeling its weight in my hands. But here's what he didn't understand. When you try to dim someone else's light, you don't make yourself brighter. You just reveal how afraid you are of the dark. The applause started slowly, then built to a thunderous crescendo. People were standing now, and I could see tears in some eyes. But I wasn't done yet. The ashes he left taught me something precious, that I could burn brighter than I ever imagined. Not in spite of what happened to me, but because of it. Every design stolen, every credit taken, every moment I was made to feel small, it all became fuel for the fire that built this company. I looked directly at Adrian now, my voice growing stronger with each word. So to anyone who has ever been told they're not enough, who has ever had their work stolen or their contributions erased, who has ever been made to feel invisible, remember this. Your light doesn't need someone else's permission to shine. And when you finally let it burn at full brightness, you'll illuminate paths you never knew existed. The standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes. As I walked off the stage, award in hand, I felt a hand touch my arm. I turned to find Adrian standing there, his face a map of emotions I couldn't quite read. Zara, he started, then stopped, seeming to struggle with words. Congratulations on your nomination, I said simply. I hope you find what you're looking for. I walked away before he could respond, surrounded by well-wishers and photographers. Behind me, I heard him call my name once, but I didn't turn around. That chapter of my life was closed, and I was already writing the next one. As I posed for photos with my team, Elena squeezed my hand. You did it, she whispered. You really did it. I smiled, thinking about the woman who'd sat broken on Nina's couch 3 years ago, convinced she was nothing without someone else's validation. She'd been wrong about that too. I'd always been everything I needed to be. I just had to learn to burn bright enough to see it.